AITA for not apologizing to my coworker. After she gave me the silent treatment for weeks, I have a coworker, let's call her A, who's the classic non-contributor in group projects. You know the type. Every team has one, and you end up doing most of their work just to keep things moving. During our last team meeting, our manager gave her a task and she responded with this exaggerated, "What? Me?" reaction. Without thinking, I responded with a bit of sarcasm and said, "Well, you have to do something." I won't pretend that was the nicest thing to say. It just slipped out after years of frustration. Since then, she's been pretending I don't exist. And I don't mean being distant. I mean full-on silent treatment. If I speak, she ignores it. If I try to hand her something, it's like I'm invisible. This has been going on for 3 weeks. Things escalated today because I redid her part of our current project since it was basically unusable, and the deadline is 2 days away. She's now upset that I went behind her back. For context, our team is fewer than 5 people, and this kind of tension is obvious and affects everyone. At first, I figured she needed space and tried to let it blow over, but by the end of the second week, I was over it and decided I wasn't going to be the first one to fold. Another team member even confronted her about how awkward and uncomfortable she's making things for everyone, but she said she needs more time because she's deeply hurt that I spoke angrily to her. Here's the thing. If she had come to me about it like an adult, I probably would have apologized. But I've made no attempt because I genuinely find her reaction ridiculous. I've had disagreements with coworkers before and either talked it out or moved on. This feels like a passive-aggressive standoff that I just can't take seriously. So, am I the asshole?
AITA for not adding my girlfriend to the house deed. Even though I bought it for us, I'm feeling seriously conflicted right now. I'm 32 years old and have been incredibly disciplined with my finances, saving for years to buy a home that my longtime girlfriend and I could live in together. We've been dating for 3 years, and I recently bought a house worth $1 million. She chose not to contribute to the down payment, so I covered it entirely on my own and took out the mortgage in my name. Naturally, since we aren't married yet, I felt it made sense to keep the house deed solely under my name for the time being. I've always imagined adding her once we got married. It wasn't even a question in my mind. But now her mom and sister are telling her that if I don't put her name on the deed, then I clearly don't trust her, and that our relationship is doomed without trust. I really do trust her, but things have gotten rocky lately, and I think a lot of it stems from the growing divide between her family and me. We don't agree on much, and their constant involvement is adding pressure that's now bleeding into our relationship. What's frustrating is that when we were buying the house, she never brought up anything about the deed. This only became an issue after her family got involved. Now I'm stuck wondering if I should just put her on the deed to keep the peace, even though it feels like I'm being guilted into a major legal decision just to satisfy her relatives.
AITA for blocking my neighbor's car in my driveway before leaving town. My neighbor has been parking in my driveway for months now, even though I've told him multiple times not to. Every time I bring it up, he brushes it off with something like, "It's just for a sec," and acts like it's no big deal. It's been getting more and more annoying, especially since it's my property and he clearly doesn't respect that. So last Friday, I get home and yep, there he is again, parked right in my driveway like it's his personal spot. Only this time, I was actually heading out of town for the weekend, so I parked right behind him, locked up my car, grabbed my weekend bag, and left. A couple of hours later, I noticed a bunch of missed calls and a text from him saying something like, "Dude, UTF?" But I didn't reply. Figured he could use the weekend to think about boundaries. Hope it was a peaceful one. Am I the jerk for bringing my own fridge to work after my lunches kept disappearing? I work in a small office, just 10 of us, and we all share one kitchen space. That includes a communal fridge. Over the last few weeks, someone's been helping themselves to my lunch. Not just snacks here and there, full homemade meals. I'd go to grab my lunch and it would be completely gone. It's not only irritating, it's costing me money and totally throwing off my day. I brought it up a couple of times in our office group chat. I said things like, "Hey, someone's been taking my food, please stop doing that." The responses were either radio silence or vague sympathy like, "That's so annoying," or "Some people have no manners." No one owned up to it. So I decided to solve the problem myself. I bought a small personal fridge and set it up under my desk, just big enough for a lunch and a drink. I also added a lock, because why not? Ever since then, no stolen lunches, problem solved. That is, until last Friday. One of my coworkers, I'll call her Dana, came up to me while I was eating and said the personal fridge was antisocial and kinda paranoid. She told me it made me look like I thought I was better than everyone else. I told her flat out. I was sick of my lunches vanishing and this was the only way to stop it. She said I should have just brought stuff I wouldn't mind losing, like pre-packaged snacks or frozen meals. Now a couple of others are making little digs. Stuff like, "Better hide your sandwich or he'll lock it in a vault." Or, "Don't forget, he's got the VIP fridge." I feel like I'm being made out to be the office diva just for wanting to eat the lunch I brought. So, am I the jerk for locking up my food instead of letting it keep getting stolen? AITA for breaking up with my boyfriend. After he said he'd leave me for someone who'd give him kids, I'd been with my boyfriend for 4 years. Things were generally good, but we recently started having deeper talks about our future. And, eventually the topic of kids came up. He's always known that I've felt unsure about having children. I've never said a hard no, but I've been honest about my hesitation. Meanwhile, he's made it clear that he does want kids one day. This difference has caused tension between us before, but we always agreed to deal with it when the time comes. Well, that time came this past Saturday. The conversation escalated into a pretty emotional argument. He told me that life without kids would feel pointless to him, that he might resent me if I stopped him from having that experience. And you know what? That made sense to me. I really tried to see where he was coming from. I told him that maybe I would change my mind down the road. We're still young, and it's not like we need to decide tomorrow. He seemed really encouraged by that, and I thought we had a mutual understanding. But then, when I gently added that I also didn't want to force myself into parenthood, just because it's what he wanted, especially if I wasn't ready, he suddenly shifted gears. He flatly said that if I didn't give him kids, he'd have no choice but to leave me for someone who would. I was stunned. I had genuinely believed he wanted a future with me and that maybe we'd figure this out together. I felt blindsided. I told him how hurt I was, how I had just tried to meet him halfway, and instead of reciprocating, he threatened to leave me. His response: he said he was disappointed in me for being selfish. That was it. I snapped. I broke up with him right then and there. We haven't spoken since. Now I keep wondering, was I the asshole for leaving? Should I have been more patient? Or was it fair to walk away when someone tells you, in no uncertain terms, that they're willing to trade you in? AITA for refusing to replace my nephew's leather jacket. After my dog had an accident on it, we have 3 dogs, including one we recently adopted after his owner passed away. He's gentle but sensitive and prefers quiet, so when we have guests, he usually retreats upstairs to our bedroom. He also has a sensitive stomach and can't tolerate anything but his usual dry food. Anything else causes stomach upset, and because he has long fur, it's not a minor cleanup. This weekend we hosted family, and everyone brought food for a buffet. My 3 brothers, their wives, and a bunch of their older kids came over. We've had issues in the past with guests feeding the dogs despite being told not to, so I loudly warned everyone as they arrived. Don't feed Pickles any treats or human food, or you'll be the one upstairs shampooing the poop out of his fur. My sister-in-law Tracy laughed and made a joke about me being too graphic, but I stood my ground and reminded everyone that Pickles is more sensitive than the other dogs. Later, my husband found a sausage roll upstairs. My nephew Dave admitted he'd tried to make friends with Pickles by giving him food. We were annoyed, but everyone else acted like it wasn't a big deal. That's when I realized everyone had dumped their coats in our bedroom like they always do. I hadn't thought to tell them otherwise. When I checked on Pickles, I saw he'd had a small accident, likely from the sausage roll, and some of it had gotten on Dave's leather jacket. Pickles had never had an indoor accident before, and clearly didn't want to come downstairs with a crowd around. I got him into the shower to clean him up while my husband came to help. People came upstairs to see what was going on, and Dave absolutely lost it when he saw his jacket, yelling, red-faced, accusing me of having the dog poop on it intentionally to make a point. We cleaned the jacket with antibacterial wipes, and it looked fine. No visible marks or smell, but of course it would need a proper cleaning. The party ended abruptly, and Dave and Tracy stayed behind to yell until my brother got them to leave, saying we'd deal with it later. I thought the whole thing would blow over, but it didn't. Now Dave and Tracy are texting nonstop, demanding $150 for a new jacket. I keep saying no. It was his fault, and I was the one cleaning up the mess. At first my husband agreed, but now he's wavering, saying we should have moved the coats ourselves, since we knew someone would probably ignore us. He says I'm being technically right, and missing the bigger picture. Dave's just a teen, and this isn't worth the fight. And maybe he's right. I mean, if the dog had chewed the coat, I'd replace it immediately without question. That makes me wonder if I'm being unreasonable here. I offered to cover cleaning costs, but they won't accept that. So, AITA, I got a rude passenger kicked off a flight, and I lied to do it. There's a little secret I've carried around for a while now. It might come off as petty or even a bit amusing, but it's something that still weighs on me with guilt whenever I think about it. I travel quite a bit, sometimes for work, sometimes just to get away. I fly so often that I occasionally start to recognize flight attendants on certain airlines. I doubt they recognize me, but that's not the point. One thing I've always noticed at airports is how people tend to line up 20-30 minutes before boarding even begins. Personally, I never understood the rush. Since I'm a frequent flyer, I usually just stay seated and wait for the crowd to die down. I'm not holding anyone up, just trying to avoid stress and unnecessary chaos. Anyway, on one particular trip, I was sitting near the gate when I noticed this middle-aged woman pushing her way through the boarding line. No courtesy, no excuse. Me, just plowing through people like she owned the place. She had bleached blonde hair, flashy Louis Vuitton bags, and carried herself with a kind of arrogance that practically screamed, "Do you know who I am?" But the part that stuck with me, and really ticked me off, was when she actually used her foot to nudge a small child, maybe 6 or 7 years old, out of her path. Like he was a suitcase, not a person. Fast forward to when we finally board. I get to my row, and surprise, there she is, sitting in the window seat I had specifically chosen and paid extra for. I didn't raise my voice. I just calmly told the flight attendant that she was in my assigned seat and was being rude about it. The woman instantly exploded. She started shouting that I was lying, that she got there first, and that no one had told her otherwise. I didn't push back. I just let her spiral while standing there quietly, acting as confused as possible. The more she talked, the worse it got. She insulted the flight attendant, made threats, and created a full-on scene. Eventually, they kicked her off the flight. A few people even clapped when it happened. But here's the twist. I made the whole thing up. I never actually interacted with her before that. I didn't speak to her until the moment I stood in front of that seat. I just couldn't forget the way she treated that kid. I guess part of me wanted her to face some kind of consequence. Something small. A little wake-up call. And now, I can't stop thinking about it. Sure, she was awful, but maybe she was having the worst day of her life. Maybe she was headed somewhere important. Because of me, she missed her flight, and I later found out she couldn't get another one for 2 full days. I'm not looking for anyone to tell me I did the right thing. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just needed to say it, to get it out. Maybe next time I catch myself thinking about that moment while walking through a terminal, I'll feel a little less heavy. AITA for going brainless in my own garden. Even though it upset my neighbor, I live in a housing complex with a small private garden space of our own. The area is semi-private. There are bushes planted by the complex for separation, but they're not very tall, so it's pretty easy to see into neighboring gardens or even from the shared courtyard area. The other day, I was sitting in my garden wearing just a shirt with no bra, and one of the neighbors came over to complain about it. I was so caught off guard that I immediately apologized just to avoid conflict, but afterward I started questioning why I even had to. It's not like I was nude, I was fully dressed, and honestly, even if I were in public, being braless wouldn't be illegal or inappropriate. This is my own outdoor space, and I should be able to relax in it however I want, especially if I'm still covered. Now I'm debating whether I should say something the next time I see him. Part of me wants to calmly defend myself, but another part worries it could escalate or get posted in our complex's shared Facebook group, which would just be humiliating. I don't want drama, but I also don't think I should have to change how I dress in my own garden just because someone else is uncomfortable.
AITA for kicking out my wife's sister. After she accused me of manipulating my wife into having a baby, when my wife and I were younger, she was very clear about not wanting kids. Even after we got married, she would say she didn't see herself ever becoming a parent, and I fully respected that. At the time, we were both 20. Now we're 26, and over the past year or so, she's changed her mind. After some long conversations and thoughtful consideration, we decided to start trying for a baby. It wasn't immediate, but after a few months of trying, we got the news. My wife was pregnant. We were thrilled and wanted to celebrate the moment, so we invited our families over and surprised them with the announcement. Most people were excited and congratulated us, but my wife's aunt and her daughter, my wife's sister, reacted very differently. In front of everyone, her sister said something like, "Wait, you didn't want kids. You must have been manipulated into this." She looked right at me and accused me of controlling and manipulating my wife into getting pregnant against her will. I told her that wasn't true. We'd made this decision together. But she doubled down, insisting that she knows my wife, and there's no way she changed her mind on her own. She even brought up my past anger issues, calling me controlling. At that point, I was humiliated and angry. I told her that whatever issues I've had are not her business, and if she couldn't be respectful, she should leave immediately. My wife backed me up and told everyone that she made the decision to have a child because she wanted to, and no one forced her. Her sister and aunt left, but the mood was already ruined. The rest of the night was awkward. Most of our family still supported us, but it definitely cast a shadow over the celebration. Now I can't stop thinking I made a mistake by even inviting her in the first place. So, AITA for kicking her out after that outburst.
AITJ for breaking up with my boyfriend after he expected me to pay for his entire $600 birthday dinner. My boyfriend organized a birthday dinner for himself at a fairly expensive restaurant. He invited a large group, around 12 people, mostly his own friends and some cousins. I had no input on the guest list or the venue, but I was genuinely happy to show up and celebrate with him. I've always earned a bit more than he has, and I honestly don't mind covering little things now. And then, for his birthday, I paid for his cake and got him a thoughtful gift I knew he'd really appreciate. I fully intended to cover his meal too. That seemed reasonable to me. But then the check came. It was over $600, way more than I was expecting, even for a group that size. And without even a conversation, he just looked at me and said, "You've got it, right?" Right there in front of everyone. No warning, no discussion, just pure assumption. I was completely stunned. I leaned in and told him quietly that I wasn't comfortable paying for the entire table. His demeanor changed instantly. He got cold, visibly annoyed, and accused me of making a scene even though I had barely said anything. A few people at the table looked just as confused as I felt. I ended up paying for his meal, left money to cover the cake, and left early. I cried in the Uber because I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just been used. Later that night, he texted me saying I had embarrassed him. I told him it wasn't fair to put me in that situation without even talking to me first. I broke up with him the next day. Since then, a few of his friends have been messaging me, calling me selfish. Now I feel torn, like maybe I overreacted. But at the same time, I really do feel like he saw me more as a wallet than a partner. ATJ. For ending things over this?
AITA for sending my boyfriend food at work. When my ex works there too, I was married for 4 years. We split after finding out I couldn't have kids. For me, it wasn't devastating. I've always been okay living child-free. But my ex was set on having a mini-me and continuing his legacy. Overall, our marriage wasn't bad, but that was a deal breaker for him. I wasn't heartbroken, honestly. It turns out there's much better out there. My current boyfriend is genuinely the kindest person I've ever known. For context, we live in a small town, and apparently I have a type. My boyfriend of 7 months happens to work with my ex. They're both military contractors at the same airfield, doing different tasks but in the same work zone and with the same crew. I absolutely love to cook and bake. That said, I'm trying to avoid giving myself diabetes, so I don't eat everything I make. When I was married, I used to pack my ex's lunches and occasionally send trays of baked goods to his workplace. I've taken several culinary courses and have been told what I make is bakery quality. Funny enough, when I first started dating my current boyfriend, he admitted he always looked forward to the treats I sent when I was still with my ex. Now I pack his lunches and send food with him to work, just like I used to. Apparently the guys at work have been giving my ex a hard time. Dating hasn't gone well for him since the divorce, not surprising, and now they're ribbing him even more. They've been teasing that I upgraded. Same job title, but with a hotter guy. My boyfriend doesn't mind. The jokes all play in his favor and make him look good. The others keep saying he's lucky, and he agrees. Well, I recently got a long text from my ex, asking me to stop sending food to work with my boyfriend, because it's making things awkward for him. He also asked me not to show up at their annual 4th of July get-together. I kind of feel like he's offloading his insecurity onto me. I don't think it's fair. He's the one uncomfortable, but I'm the one being asked to change. Still, I'm not totally heartless. So if people genuinely think I'm out of line, I'll consider backing off. AITA got suspended over a misunderstanding, so I took the best vacation on their dime on. A Monday evening, I asked my manager if it was okay for me to skip my upcoming morning shift. He assured me it was fine. He said the new hire would be in for training, and with it being a slow lunch period, they'd have more than enough coverage. That worked for me. The following day, I got a message from the owner, who's known for being as jumpy and impatient as a squirrel on espresso. He asked why I didn't show up for work. I explained exactly what my manager had told me. His response? That the trainee wasn't considered a proper server yet, and since I didn't personally get someone to replace me, it counted as a no-show. As punishment, he handed me a week-long suspension. Now here's the kicker. I'm arguably their top performer. I'm never late, I consistently get excellent tips, and customers literally name-drop me in glowing online reviews. But instead of arguing, I just replied with a calm, "All right, see you in a week." What did I do with that week off? Exactly what any burned-out employee would. I slept in, binged movies, played rounds of disc golf, and spent quality time with my girlfriend and my friends. It turned out to be the most relaxing week I'd had in a long while. Come Friday night, my phone buzzed. Guess who? The frantic owner, practically begging me to come in. They were so understaffed they were contemplating putting the dishwashers on the floor. He wanted me to work Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday brunch, all while my suspension was technically still active. I politely declined and told him I still hadn't learned my lesson yet, so unfortunately, I couldn't possibly help out. When I returned the following week, the vibe had totally changed. Everyone was incredibly nice to me. Still are, actually. AITA for refusing to punish my daughter for kicking her cousin after he hit her. My 6-year-old daughter and I were at my nephew's 4th birthday party over the weekend, hosted at my sister's house. It was your usual big family gathering, plenty of food, chaos, and kids running wild in the backyard while the adults caught up. At one point, I heard yelling and crying coming from outside. I looked over and saw my daughter standing next to one of her cousins, who was sitting on the ground, holding his stomach. His mom rushed over and immediately started scolding my daughter, demanding to know why she had kicked him. My daughter looked upset but composed, and she explained that her cousin had punched her in the arm because she didn't want to give him a toy. She said she told him to stop and tried to walk away, but when he hit her again, she kicked him in the stomach. His mom was livid and insisted I punish my daughter and make her apologize. I told her I'd speak to my daughter in private, but that I wasn't going to discipline her for defending herself. I explained to my daughter that kicking should always be a last resort, and that if possible, it's better to go get an adult. But I also made sure she knew that if someone keeps hitting her and won't stop, she's allowed to protect herself. Now, some of my relatives are saying I handled the situation poorly and that I'm encouraging violence, but I don't see it that way. I don't want my daughter to be aggressive, but I absolutely want her to understand that she doesn't have to just stand there and take it when someone's hurting her. So AITA for not punishing her? AITA for showing up at the house where my partner's car was after. He lied about where he'd be. My boyfriend and I had been together for just over 3 years. I had no reason to suspect anything. Nothing seemed off. He told me he was going to hang out at his friend's house, a guy friend I actually know, and I know where that friend lives. He left, and about 2 hours later, my friend texted me asking, "Who does partner know on street name?" I replied, "As far as I know, no one." Why? She told me his car was parked in the driveway of a house on that street, definitely not where he said he'd be. So obviously he wasn't at his friend's house. I'm not sure if this counts as psycho behavior, but I asked her for the address. Without even thinking to text him first, to give him a chance to lie or explain, I just grabbed my keys and drove straight there. I don't know why I didn't pause. Maybe I didn't want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe deep down, I already knew. I pulled up and sure enough, his car was sitting right there in the driveway. I parked a bit down the street and texted him, "Having a good time?" He replied almost instantly, saying he and his friend were having fun building a new PC together. So now I knew, without a doubt, he was lying. I walked up to the house and knocked on the door. A woman answered. I had no idea who she was, but the moment she saw me, her face dropped. She knew exactly who I was. I stayed calm and just said, "Tell him his stuff will be on my front lawn when he wants to come and get it." Then I turned around and left. About an hour later, he came home while I was in the middle of gathering up his things. And instead of apologizing, he exploded, said I was psycho, that showing up like that was crazy, that I was out of line. I didn't even respond. I just kept packing his stuff. He tried to stop me, got in my face and yelled, "Stop!" And that's when I lost it. I shoved him away and started crying. I told him to get his stuff and leave. Then I locked myself in my office and waited until he was gone. This all happened just last night. He didn't take much, just a bag of clothes and his toiletries. Some of his stuff is still here. He hasn't messaged me, and I haven't reached out either. So here I am wondering, was I the asshole for showing up at that house after I knew he lied?